Do you know what the most powerful decision you'll ever make is? Walking away, silently. No warning, no dramatic exit. Just you choosing peace over chaos. It's not easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing you'll ever do, to detach from people, habits, and thoughts that once felt like home, but now feel like prisons. You don't announce it, you don't explain it, you just stop showing up where your soul no longer feels safe. And yet, that quiet exit, it's louder than any argument. It's the moment your energy stops begging to be understood and starts choosing to be protected. The Stoics understood this deeply. Why do we keep feeding those thoughts with noise, drama, and emotional clutter? Why do we stay in places that drain us just because we're afraid to leave without saying a word? Let me be honest with you. Real strength isn't in confrontation. It's in control. It's in learning to let go of what weakens you without asking for permission. This video is going to walk you through 15 things you must silently remove from your life. No anger, no chaos, just clarity. If that resonates with you, if you're tired of being who the world expects you to be and you're ready to grow into the person you were meant to become, then please subscribe. Because this might be the first step in your quiet revolution. Let's grow, silently but powerfully. 1. The mask you wear for approval. You don't have to pretend anymore. You really don't. That quiet performance you put on just to be accepted, the nods you give when you disagree, the fake smiles you wear when you're hurt, the silence you keep when you want to speak. It's exhausting. There comes a point where wearing the mask becomes heavier than just facing whatever reaction your real self might get. Maybe it started in school. Maybe it came from family or a relationship, or some moment you didn't even notice. But slowly, piece by piece, you built a version of yourself designed to be safe, to be liked, to be acceptable, and now that version of you is so rehearsed, even you forget it's not real. The truth is, being liked for a mask means nothing. It means they don't actually like you. They like the character you play. That's why it never feels fulfilling, even when you get the approval. Even when you're surrounded by people, you still feel alone. Because deep down, no one really knows you. And how could they? You've kept yourself hidden under layers of what people wanted to see. You keep adjusting your tone, your style, your pace, trying to match what others expect, hoping that if you just keep everyone happy, they'll stay. But what if the price for that approval is your own peace? It's not selfish to be yourself. It's not wrong to have opinions, to walk away, to say no, or to outgrow people who only knew the older version of you. If being real makes someone uncomfortable, that's their discomfort to carry, not yours. You weren't born to perform. You were born to live, to grow, to breathe fully in your own skin without apology. Yes, letting go of the mask will mean losing some people, but you're not really losing them. You're losing the illusion that they were meant for you, because anyone who only wants the version of you that pleases them was never interested in you in the first place. You can feel it when it's time to be real. Your body starts rejecting the act. You feel drained after every interaction that demands the fake smile. You feel hollow after agreeing with something that felt wrong. That's your inner compass screaming for freedom. The Stoics believed in alignment between thought, word, and action. When you say what you mean, when you act from truth, your soul breathes easier. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because sometimes the path to becoming your truest self starts with being misunderstood. And maybe that's the price of honesty, being misread. But it's worth it. Because what's the alternative? Living a life that isn't yours, chasing approval that never fills you, pretending forever. You weren't put here to be a watered-down version of yourself for someone else's comfort. You were put here to walk your own path, even if it's unfamiliar to others. And the strange thing is, when you start living as your real self, you don't just feel free. You actually start attracting people who see you, support you, and love you for exactly who you are, not who you pretend to be. It's a strange kind of peace. The peace that comes from no longer trying to manage everyone's perception. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop wondering what they think. You stop editing yourself. And in that space, something quiet but powerful begins to grow. Self-respect. Not arrogance, not defiance. Just a calm confidence that says, this is who I am. And I'm okay with that. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. You just need to live it. Letting go of the mask doesn't mean becoming harsh or cold. It means becoming whole. It means finally allowing the parts of you that have been buried, your voice, your ideas, your real laughter, your boundaries, to rise again. You'll feel awkward at first. You might even feel guilty. That's normal. You've been trained for years to believe that pleasing others is the same as being kind. But the kindest thing you can do is show up truthfully, because that gives others permission to do the same. You'll be surprised at how much lighter life feels when you stop filtering yourself. Conversations become easier, relationships become clearer, and decisions, they stop being about what will they think and start being about what feels right for me. That shift is everything. It's not about becoming rebellious, it's about becoming real. No more nodding when you want to shake your head. No more laughing when something doesn't feel funny. No more saying yes when your body says no. You don't owe anyone the version of you that made them comfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Truth is uncomfortable. But silence and pretending are worse. They chip away at you quietly until you don't even recognize your own voice anymore. So take the risk. Be misunderstood. Be too much. Be quiet. Be bold. Be unsure. Be evolving. But above all, be you. Let them call it strange. Let them call it selfish. Let them walk away if they need to. But you walk home to yourself. That's where your peace lives. That's where your real power begins. The day you drop the mask is the day you start living for real. 2. The excuse called tomorrow. Let's be real. I'll do it tomorrow has probably stolen more from your life than anything else. Not failure, not rejection, just delay. Quiet, harmless-looking delay. It's so subtle that you almost don't notice it. How often you trade today for a promise that never arrives. You convince yourself that you're waiting for the right moment, that things need to align, that you need a little more clarity, or time, or energy. But days turn into weeks, and weeks into years, and the dreams you swore you'd chase get buried under calendars filled with excuses. The most dangerous thing about tomorrow is how reasonable it sounds. It's not dramatic. It doesn't scare you. It just whispers, "Not now," and you believe it, again and again. What we often forget is that action doesn't require perfection. You don't need to have all the answers, or all the resources, or even all the courage. You just need to begin. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop waiting and start moving. Not rushing, just moving. One step, one small, imperfect action. That first move unlocks something inside you. Momentum, clarity, confidence. All the things you thought would come before action often only show up after it. Waiting won't bring certainty, but doing, that's where everything changes. You know what's worse than failure? Regret. Because at least when you fail, you learn, you grow, you build something real. But regret, that just eats away at you slowly. You look back and realize that the thing you were too scared to start could have been the thing that saved you, freed you, fulfilled you. You'll never be able to rewind the time you spent hesitating. And the truth is, most of the things you delay aren't delayed because of logic. They're delayed because of fear. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of being seen trying. Fear of starting small. But every master was once a beginner. Every great thing began clumsily. What makes it great is that it began at all. We live in a culture that glorifies hustle, but ironically, most people are just hustling in their minds. They plan, they imagine, they dream, but they rarely execute. The idea lives in their head for so long that it starts to feel real, even though it never left the ground. But nothing changes until something moves. That text you're afraid to send, that project you keep overthinking, that change you keep putting off, all of it is costing you energy just by sitting in your head. You carry the weight of what you're avoiding, and the longer you avoid it, the heavier it becomes. There's never going to be a day where everything is lined up perfectly. The fear will still be there, the doubts will still whisper, the obstacles won't vanish, but neither will your desire, and if it keeps coming back, that's not coincidence. That's your deeper self trying to break through the fog of excuses. You don't need a loud breakthrough. Sometimes the most powerful shift comes from a quiet decision. The decision to start, even if it's small. Even if it's awkward. Even if no one notices but you. Seneca once said, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." That line doesn't hit until you look back and realize how many moments you've let slip, how many passions you buried under distractions, how many conversations you avoided because you were scared of what they might change, how many goals you gave up on before you even tried. Time doesn't wait for clarity. It keeps moving, and you either move with it or watch it pass by. Start where you are. Use what you have. Don't underestimate the power of small actions. 5 push-ups today is better than fantasizing about a perfect workout routine next month. Writing 1 paragraph now is better than obsessing over the perfect novel outline forever. Calling someone you love, even if you don't have the right words, is better than rehearsing a perfect conversation that never happens. Action creates progress. Progress builds belief. And belief transforms everything. When you start doing the things you've been putting off, something strange happens. You stop being afraid of effort. You stop resenting discipline. You start respecting yourself. That self-respect is priceless. It's not about crossing everything off a list. It's about becoming the kind of person who follows through, who keeps promises to themselves, who no longer lets fear dress up as logic. You can still be thoughtful. You can still reflect. But reflection without movement turns into rumination. And overthinking is just fear disguised as preparation. At some point, you have to stop reading about the life you want and start living it. One bold, messy, beautiful step at a time. You might trip, you might fall, but even if you do, you'll be further ahead than the version of you that stayed frozen, waiting for perfect conditions. Your life won't change in a single day, but it can begin to shift today. That's what matters, that you stop giving your power away to a day that doesn't exist, that you realize someday isn't on the calendar. Only today is. And you, not tomorrow, not next year, not when everything is ideal. You are enough to begin right now. 3. That looping tape of the past. It's strange how the past can feel more alive than the present. A conversation that ended years ago still echoes in your mind. A mistake you made once still stings like it just happened. A look, a word, a moment, all still playing on loop over and over again. Some of those memories aren't even that significant when seen from a distance, but they carry emotional weight that never got released. They linger, not because they're powerful, but because they were never truly processed. And so, they become part of your inner dialogue, not in the background, front and center, always reminding you of what went wrong, of what hurt, of what broke. You might think that remembering is necessary, that it protects you from being hurt again. But there's a difference between remembering and reliving. One teaches you, the other traps you, and far too many people confuse self-awareness with self-punishment. You don't need to keep replaying the hardest chapters of your life just to stay grounded. You're not required to keep those wounds open as proof of survival. What happened, happened. You survived, and survival is enough. You don't have to live inside the same story forever. There's a part of you, maybe small, maybe buried, that knows this. That part of you wants peace. It doesn't want to forget what happened, but it doesn't want to be defined by it either. And that's the key. You are not what happened to you. You are not your trauma. You are not the pain. You are the one who went through it, the one who endured, the one who kept going, even if it was messy, even if it was quiet, even if no one noticed. That's who you are. Not the victim of the story, but the one still here, still breathing, still capable of rewriting the next page. And yes, it's hard. Letting go of the past feels like betrayal sometimes. You might think that if you release the pain, you're letting the people who hurt you off the hook. Or maybe you're afraid that if you move on, the hurt will come back. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't about them. It's about you. It's not about justifying what happened. It's about finally putting the weight down. Because the more you carry, the less you can move forward. The more space the past takes up, the less room there is for the present to grow. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that's the essence of healing. You can't change what happened. You can't go back and make different choices. You can't edit the script. But you can decide what you'll do with the pain. Will it become a cage or a compass? Will it hold you in place or point you towards something better? The most painful thing isn't always the event itself. It's the way we carry it afterward. We replay the memory. We analyze every detail. We wonder what we could have done differently. And in doing that, we keep the wound fresh. The mind keeps touching it, poking at it, never letting it scab over. Healing doesn't mean the past disappears. It means you stop letting it dominate your present. You stop waking up every day with your heart already heavy from yesterday. And here's what people don't often admit. Sometimes we hold on to pain because it's familiar. It becomes part of our identity. We get used to being the one who was hurt, who was abandoned, who made the mistake. And without realizing it, we build our self-image around it. So the idea of letting go isn't just about peace. It feels like losing a part of ourselves. But that version of you, the one who went through all of that, they're tired. They've done enough. They don't need to keep reliving it for you to remember your strength. They deserve rest. You don't owe your past anything. You've paid your dues. You've done the reflection. You've carried the lessons. Now it's time to carry only that. The lesson, not the burden. The wisdom, not the wound. The insight, not the pain. You are allowed to change your story. You are allowed to heal without seeking permission. You are allowed to be more than your worst moment. When you catch yourself going back, when the thoughts pull you into old guilt, old anger, old sadness, pause, breathe, acknowledge the feeling, and then gently remind yourself, that was then. This is now. It's not denial. It's a choice to not let something that already happened hurt you again today. The mind can be a relentless narrator. It loves to replay the parts it didn't understand, the parts that scared it, the parts that made no sense. But you are the one listening. And the moment you stop identifying with every thought, you begin to take your power back. You begin to choose new thoughts, thoughts that bring calm instead of chaos, thoughts that support you instead of sabotage you. There's no deadline for healing, but there is a cost for postponing it. Every day spent living in the shadow of what was is a day you don't fully step into what could be, and you deserve more than that. You deserve to wake up without that constant loop in your head. You deserve mornings that aren't heavy with old grief. You deserve to smile and not feel guilty for it. You deserve to move on, even if the world doesn't applaud it or understand it. You can honor your past without being chained to it. You can respect what shaped you without letting it define you. You can be grateful for the strength you gained without keeping the pain that built it. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing freedom. It means whispering to yourself, "I'm allowed to be okay now." And that is a kind of quiet courage the world desperately needs more of. 4. Emotional begging. There's a certain kind of silence that follows emotional begging. It's not the kind of silence you choose, but the kind you're left with after you've poured yourself out trying to be enough for someone who was never going to meet you halfway. You try harder, reach further, speak softer, love louder, and still they pull away. You think maybe if you just do one more thing, give one more piece of yourself, they'll finally stay. But the truth is, real connection doesn't require chasing. Love that needs to be begged for isn't love. It's approval wearing a mask. And approval is never worth your peace. Somewhere along the line, we were taught that love is earned. That we have to prove ourselves over and over just to be chosen. We got the idea that being good enough meant pleasing others, even if it came at the cost of our own emotional health. And so we learned to beg. Not with our words always, but with our actions, with our silence, with our lowered standards, with our willingness to keep accepting less while giving more. We beg by shrinking ourselves to avoid conflict, by staying quiet when our heart wants to scream, by smiling when we're breaking inside, hoping they'll finally see how much we're worth. But love isn't a transaction. It's not a prize you earn by sacrificing your self-respect. It's not something you qualify for by jumping through someone else's emotional hoops. If someone makes you feel like you have to work for their attention, their affection, their time, they're not offering love. They're offering a test, and you weren't made to live in a constant exam of your worth. You were made to be met, fully, freely, with respect. There's a kind of love that doesn't ask you to beg, that sees your silence and listens, that notices when your energy changes, not because you make a scene, but because it genuinely cares. That love doesn't punish you with distance. It doesn't make you guess where you stand. It doesn't manipulate you into thinking your value depends on how much pain you're willing to tolerate. But to find that kind of love, you have to first believe you deserve it. You have to stop accepting crumbs and calling it a meal. It hurts to walk away, especially when your heart is still involved. But it hurts more to stay in a place where you constantly have to prove that you matter. There's a slow kind of erosion that happens when you keep chasing people who only respond when you pull away. Your confidence starts to crack, your self-image gets blurry, and you begin to confuse instability with passion, manipulation with intensity, and inconsistency with love. That's how deep the rewiring goes when you live in a space of emotional scarcity. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because when you accept yourself fully, you stop needing others to do it for you. You stop begging. You stop pleading for a seat at tables where you're only invited to be useful, not valued." And yes, it's terrifying at first, because it means letting go of relationships that once felt like home. It means facing the emptiness you used to fill with distraction. It means standing in your own truth, even if it shakes. But what comes next is peace. A kind of inner peace that doesn't need to be validated. A love for yourself that doesn't rely on someone else's approval. You begin to move differently. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. You stop explaining yourself. You stop performing. You just are. And those who are meant for you will see you without needing the show. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop talking, stop fixing, stop chasing. Let the silence speak for you. Let your absence explain what your presence once tolerated, not as a game, not as punishment, but as a boundary, a final act of self-respect. Because you were never supposed to feel like love is survival. You were never supposed to confuse anxiety with intimacy. You were never meant to be the one who always gives, always waits, always explains. You are not half of anything. You were not born to be completed by another person. You are not missing pieces. You are whole. You have always been whole. And the people who cannot meet you where you are not your people. That doesn't make them evil. It just means they're not capable of giving what you need. And your job is not to teach them how to love you. Your job is to love yourself enough to walk away when they can't. This doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you protect it. You become more discerning, not more bitter. You learn to recognize the difference between someone who wants to love you and someone who wants to use you. You learn to sit with the discomfort of being alone rather than tolerate the pain of being unseen. And in that silence, in that solitude, you begin to heal. Healing doesn't come from chasing closure. It comes from choosing yourself, from understanding that your worth was never up for debate, that your softness was never weakness, that your willingness to stay loyal in chaos wasn't foolish. It was love, just misplaced. And now you get to place it where it belongs, in your own heart, in your own hands, in your own life, where peace is no longer a negotiation. You don't have to scream your worth to be heard. You don't have to prove your loyalty through suffering. You don't have to beg for a love that should have been offered freely. You only have to decide that you are done explaining why you deserve to be treated well. Done chasing. Done fixing what you didn't break. Done hoping they'll finally see what's been clear all along. When love is real, it arrives without pressure, without doubt, without performance. So let them go. Let the silence fall. Let the peace come in like a quiet wave, washing over every part of you that used to fight for scraps. This isn't giving up. This is rising up. This is remembering who you were before you convinced yourself you had to be earned. This is the end of emotional begging and the beginning of something so much better. 5. Your imaginary catastrophes. You're not a fortune teller, and yet you live as if you are, forecasting disaster after disaster, writing mental scripts for conversations that haven't happened, rehearsing pain that may never come. Every time you imagine the worst, your body tightens, your breath shortens, and your peace drains out of you like a slow leak. You try to control the future by preparing for it in your mind, but all that's really happening is that you're suffering twice. Once for something that hasn't happened, and once again for letting the fear of it shape your present. There's something exhausting about constantly preparing for impact, like walking through life in a flinch, always bracing for the next bad thing. It becomes a habit. You start believing that worrying keeps you safe, that if you think about every possible outcome, you'll be ready. But worry doesn't prepare you. It paralyzes you. It robs you of the only time you ever truly have, now. And the truth is, most of what you fear never becomes real. Most of the imagined conversations don't happen. Most of the failures you dread never show up. And even when they do, they never play out the way you pictured. Because reality is rarely as cruel as fear makes it out to be. We often talk about fear like it's logical, like it's helpful. But fear doesn't show up with facts. It shows up with noise. It hijacks your attention and points it at things that are out of your hands. And once you're hooked, your imagination takes over. Suddenly you're predicting the end of relationships, the collapse of plans, the judgment of others. all based on shadows. But shadows aren't proof. They're just absence of light, and you have more light than you think. It's not your job to predict the future. It's your job to be present in what's real, to face what is, not what might be. And yes, it's uncomfortable. The unknown always is. But discomfort isn't danger. That's the mistake your mind keeps making. Just because something is unfamiliar doesn't mean it's unsafe. Just because you don't know how something will turn out doesn't mean it will go badly. In fact, the best things in your life probably began without certainty. You moved anyway. You chose anyway. You trusted anyway. Fear has a clever way of disguising itself as logic. It tells you that you're being cautious, responsible, realistic. But most of the time, you're just running mental simulations of failure and calling it preparation. You end up rehearsing heartbreak before love even has a chance. You imagine being judged before you've spoken. You fear losing something before you've even had the courage to fully hold it. That's not safety. That's self-sabotage wearing a mask. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. This wasn't just philosophy, it was survival. The understanding that your mind can either be your sanctuary or your prison. And every time you choose to believe your anxious thoughts without questioning them, you reinforce the bars around you. But what if you chose to challenge those thoughts instead? What if you let them pass without grabbing onto them? What if you stopped trusting every fear that walked through the door of your mind? Anxiety thrives on what-ifs, but peace lives in what is. What is real right now? What do you actually know to be true in this moment? That's where your attention belongs. Because your nervous system doesn't know the difference between imagined danger and real danger. So every time you dive into worry, your body responds like it's under threat. Your stress rises, your patience shrinks, your clarity disappears. And yet, nothing has happened. Not really. You've just been at war with your own thoughts. The most frustrating part is that most of us know this. We know worry doesn't help. We know overthinking is draining. But the habit is so strong, it feels automatic. That's where awareness steps in. Not judgment, just awareness. You notice the fear rise. You feel the spiral begin. And instead of following it down, you pause. You breathe. You ground yourself in what's actually in front of you. And slowly, you teach your nervous system a new language. One where safety isn't built on control, but on trust. Trust in your ability to respond, no matter what happens. Trust that you are more resilient than you think. That even if something goes wrong, you'll adapt, you'll learn, you'll grow. Because you've done it before. Every difficult thing you've faced, you got through it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not without scars, but you're still here. And that means your fear is not the full story. You're not fragile, you're just tired. Tired of holding the weight of every possible outcome. Tired of playing chess with imaginary problems. Tired of believing that everything depends on your vigilance. Let that go. You don't have to see every twist and turn ahead of time. You just have to be present for the step in front of you, and then the next, and then the next. Life doesn't require prediction. It requires participation. So take a breath, drop your shoulders. You don't need to solve tomorrow today. You don't need to protect yourself from a future that doesn't exist yet. All you need is the courage to show up for what's real. And what's real is this: you are safe in this moment. You are breathing, you are aware, you are capable. And when fear comes knocking again, because it will, you'll know it for what it is. Noise, not prophecy, just noise. Let it pass. Because the more you stay in the now, the quieter that noise becomes. And in that quiet, something beautiful begins to grow. A trust in yourself that no catastrophe, real or imagined, can take away. 6. Silent grudges that corrode you. Holding on to resentment feels like control, like if you just stay mad enough, guarded enough, cold enough, you won't be hurt again. You think that staying angry keeps you strong, that it creates distance between you and the people who did you wrong. But in truth, the only thing it builds is a prison, and you're the one locked inside. The grudge doesn't protect you. It poisons you, quietly, slowly, until your peace is so clouded you can't even remember what it felt like to be light. It doesn't always show up loudly either. Sometimes it's not the blow-up argument or the dramatic falling out that leaves the deepest scar. Sometimes it's the quiet hurt you never spoke about, the betrayal you never admitted stung, the apology you never got but kept waiting for. Those are the ones that linger, the ones that turn into invisible walls inside your heart. You go about your day like everything's fine, but deep down, you're still holding on to something, a name, a moment, a memory that tightens every time it surfaces, and you tell yourself it's not a big deal, that you've moved on. But if it still hurts when you remember it, it's not gone, it's buried. Forgiveness gets misunderstood. People think it's about excusing the behavior, letting someone off the hook, acting like it never happened. But forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about not carrying someone else's actions into your next chapter. It's about refusing to give the past that kind of power. Resentment, no matter how justified, anchors you to the moment you were hurt. It keeps you there, stuck in a loop. You replay the words, the decisions, the silence, and in doing so, you relive the pain. Not just once, over and over. And the worst part? They may not even know. They've moved on. They're living their life. Meanwhile, you're still burning with something they probably forgot. That's how grudges work. They disguise themselves as strength, when really they're wounds that never got to breathe. And healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in release. In deciding that you're done giving energy to something that only takes from you. Holding on to anger becomes part of your identity. You start reacting from it, thinking from it, living through it. You think you're protecting yourself, but really you're repeating a pattern that only makes things heavier. You avoid closeness, fearing betrayal. You pull away from love, expecting disappointment. You mistrust others because trust once got broken. But none of that is healing. It's just self-preservation, and it's exhausting. The real power isn't in staying angry, it's in choosing peace. Not because they earned it, not because they asked for it, but because you're tired of bleeding for someone else's mistake. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. There's nothing soft about refusing to let the past pollute your future. It takes real strength to unclench your fists and walk away without revenge. To say, this hurt me, but it won't define me. You don't need to call them. You don't need to tell them. Forgiveness doesn't always require a conversation. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is release it internally, quietly, fully, and feel the weight start to fall off. The bitterness leaves your chest. The tension leaves your jaw. The story stops replaying every time you're alone. That's when you know you've let go, when their name doesn't trigger your entire nervous system anymore. And what's waiting on the other side of that release is more than just peace, it's freedom. You get to move forward without dragging the past behind you. You get to show up in relationships without old wounds clouding your view. You get to breathe, fully, finally. Not everything that hurt you has to stay part of you. You're allowed to heal. You're allowed to put it down, even if they never said sorry, even if they never acknowledged what they did. Your healing doesn't need their permission. You can let go without pretending it didn't happen. You can forgive without inviting them back into your life. Boundaries still matter. Lessons still matter. But the anger, the resentment, the heaviness, that's yours to release. And when you do, you make space. Space for joy, for love, for clarity. Because when your heart isn't full of old pain, it can finally open to something better. Letting go isn't a one-time act. It's a decision you might have to make over and over, especially on the hard days. But each time you choose peace over bitterness, you take your power back. Each time you choose not to react from the old story, you become more of who you're meant to be. And that version of you, the one who's not owned by anger, is the one who can finally rest. So if you're still carrying something, ask yourself, what would it feel like to be free from this? What would your life look like if you weren't weighed down by something that's already over? And then ask yourself the real question. Do they deserve that space in your mind? Or do you deserve that space for yourself? Not everything needs closure. Sometimes you are the closure. Sometimes your decision to be done, without drama, without revenge, without explaining yourself, is enough. You're not giving them a pass. You're giving yourself peace, and that's worth more than any grudge you could ever hold. 7. The fake finish line, called happiness. We've been told a lie so many times we stopped questioning it. The lie that happiness lives somewhere out there, in the next job, the next relationship, the next version of yourself. That once you finally make 6 figures, or move to a new city, or find that one person who just gets you, you'll arrive. You'll be whole. You'll be happy. So you chase, you grind, you scroll, you compare. You build this finish line in your mind, believing that once you cross it, everything will click into place. But what nobody says out loud is this: that finish line keeps moving. Every time you get close, it shifts. And no matter how fast you run, it never really feels like enough. It starts early. You think happiness is in getting good grades, then it's graduating, then it's landing the job, then it's getting promoted, then it's finding someone, then it's settling down, then it's starting over. The line is always just a little further away, and it's exhausting. You wake up with a life that looks fine on the outside, but inside you're still waiting, still hoping, still thinking, maybe after this I'll finally feel okay. But happiness was never meant to be a finish line. It was always supposed to be the way you walk, not where you're headed. You can have the money, the love, the success, and still feel empty. Because if the voice in your head is critical, if your nervous system is always on edge, if your self-worth depends on external achievements, nothing out there will ever be enough. You'll keep chasing newer, better, more, not because you're greedy, but because you've been trained to measure your worth by how far ahead you can get. You don't even realize it's happening. It's built into the culture. The ads, the algorithms, the timelines, all pushing you to chase an image of life instead of actually living it. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not to impress, not to accumulate, but to become." That's where real peace is found, not in arriving at some perfect version of your life, but in being present for the one you already have. Because here's the truth most people miss. Happiness doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle. It shows up in small moments. The way sunlight hits your face in the morning, the quiet after a long day, the warmth of a conversation that doesn't feel forced. But if your mind is always on the next thing,